Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and welcome to today's show. A very interesting show that took place a long time ago, but a woman has been released from prison, and that's what a lot of this is about: is should she have been released from prison after getting a life sentence? So I'm going to get into the story in just a minute, but I want to welcome everybody here in the chat room. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to be in the chat room, it's always possible. If you check below, not up, check below. Click on the link to Patreon. It's $5 a month, and there are 8 live shows, 2 every week, 1 hangout and 1 case show, and that's where our community gets together and is able to participate in the show. And if you don't want to do that, don't worry about it. Please do subscribe to the channel. That supports an educational channel, and all my videos are public once the live part is done, so you're not going to miss anything. And I do try to see some of your comments and answer some of them, so I don't exclude you just because you're not a patron. But I appreciate my patrons very, very much. Also, before I get started, I do also want to mention my other channel, which is new at this point in time, and it is called Dear Profiler Pat, and I do kind of a Dear Abby thing, except from a profiler's point of view, profiling life, maybe yours. So you can send questions in to Dear Profiler Pat at, I forgot my own profilerpatbrown@gmail.com. I forgot my email. Okay, let's get to the show. All right. So I want to mention this before I start because I think it's kind of important. There is someone here who is related to the murder victim. And when I do shows, I always do them for educational purposes as a profiler, analyzing crime, analyzing behaviors, analyzing the evidence. And I have an opinion based on the evidence that I see and from my experience. It's not always what somebody wants to hear. Sometimes I get somebody writes me and says, "Oh, thank you. That was just wonderful. You know, this happened to be my relative, and I really appreciate what you said." And then I have the opposite. People say, "Hey, that happened to be someone I know," or I'm somebody that you were talking about in your video, and you're horrible, and I get hate mail. So I don't go any direction. I just say it like I see it, and so I don't know how it's ever going to be received. But that my purpose is education and not any kind of agenda. So I just want to get that out of the way, because it's important as I start into this. So, and I didn't know if you wanted me to mention your name, so I'm just going to let you speak in the chat room to people who are watching. But I'm always careful about that. And also on my Dear Profiler Pat show, I never give anybody's name or location. So people go, "I know who that is." So don't want them to do that. So anyway, this is the reason this has become. It's fairly new, but it happened a couple of years ago, 2022. We have the victim here, and we have the 2 people who are convicted of his murder here. All right, so I'm going to read just from the release information. He's still in prison for life. Although where this took place in Illinois, apparently there's no death penalties anymore. He was up for that, so now it's just life. She was in for life and managed to get it reduced to having some possibility of parole, and then she has now been freed based on quote, evidence of domestic violence. And so I'm going to read this to you. I'll show you a picture of her today. Here she is today, and this is Nancy Rish. It says here, getting out of prison. And you can see she is out of prison now. She does have a Facebook page, and she is now living a life outside of prison. So let me read you the articles, and then I'm going to go back into the whole crime and all the behaviors in the crime. A woman who was convicted for the 1987 murder of a businessman is about to be released, that was in 2022, from prison after proving she was a victim of intimate partner violence. And I'll get into, did she actually prove this or not? And even if she proved this, doesn't matter. Nancy Rish, 59, now 59, no longer looking like this, was handed a life sentence for the kidnapping and murder of Stephen Small, of I'm having trouble pronouncing it, Kankakee, Illinois. But the creation of a 2016 law allowed Rish to challenge her sentence, providing she was a victim of domestic abuse. Interesting law. She says, I did not knowingly participate in this crime that took the life of Stephen Small. However, I do take responsibility for my actions. Now, in this particular instance, she's not talking about the domestic violence. She's saying she didn't know that he was being murdered by her boyfriend. And I'll get into that. Is that true or is that not true? Should we believe her? That's so, but she's saying, I didn't knowingly participate. She said this all along. She says, she's always said she was innocent of knowing that he was being murdered, and she did not purposely help her boyfriend kidnap and murder Stephen Small. That's been her claim since the beginning, but that's not how she's getting out. Her appeals came in and all the appeals failed. But now she's being let out for that because she was a victim of domestic violence. Now, but she does say one thing which I like, which is, however, I do take responsibility for my actions. So Rish's defense petitioned the courts in 2017, arguing that Rish's then boyfriend, Danny Edwards, threatened to kill her and her son if she didn't participate in his kidnapping scheme. Danny Edwards was sentenced to death for Small's murder before his punishment was commuted to a life term. The appellate court ruled in Rish's favor when her attorney, Margaret Byron, I can't pronounce that either, claimed Edwards forced Rish to drive him to the crime scene without telling her why. The reason she followed his order to pick him up in the middle of the night at an odd location was that he had threatened to kill her 8-year-old son. He had a gun, and she believed he would do that. So now I want to point out that claim, he's saying this many years later, that's what he did to her. Whether there was any proof of that, again, I haven't found it. Edwards outfitted a 6 by 3 foot wooden box. So he made this box in the garage, and then he went and put it in the ground. And that box had an air pipe coming out. And what he did was he kidnapped Stephen Small. They say, and the courts say they kidnapped Stephen Small, but he was the one that took him to the location and put him in the box. He put him in the box, and he put in some food, some candy bars, some a light so he could see inside the box, and he put in water, and then he put in a pipe for air coming out of the box. So, and he said to the guy, well, you got about 48 hours. I got 48 hours for me to get the money, the $1 million I'm asking your wife to give up. So he kidnaps him, puts him in the box, handcuffs him, puts him in the box, covers the box up, and then covers it up with dirt and stuff, and then disappears. And by the way, who is Stephen Small? A prominent figure in the state as the heir to a media fortune and the grandson of Len Small, who served as Illinois governor from 1921 to 1929. Danny Edwards was a small-time drug dealer, basically a seller of cocaine, who plotted to kidnap Small before taking him to a rural area outside of Chicago. According to prosecutors, Edwards had hope of collecting $1 million ransom from the Small family. So he outfitted the 6 by 3 foot wooden box, which had the air pipe, and buried him alive. And he tried to collect the money, and it took too long, and Small suffocated in the box quite quickly. As a matter of fact, they say within 4 hours that the air pipe really was not effective. And so they eventually, the police did surveillance and tracing and everything, and they finally stormed their house and arrested both of them. Rish does say one more thing. She says, I hold so much grief and sorrow for his family and loved ones to this very day. My most sincere and deepest apology for the most regrettable mistake of my life. Now, you can believe her or not believe her. People can say anything, especially if you've been in jail. I think she was in prison for 37 years. Okay, so that's, so now she's out. He is not out. Okay, so that's the gist of it. All right. So I'm going to check on some of your comments, and then I'm going to go to some of the issues in this story that I ran into. Let's see right here. Sarah says, I'm not getting an abuse vibe. Well, he treated her like a princess. Okay, so we're seeing an opinion, and the question is, do we actually know what happened behind closed doors? And we have some interesting versions of this, by the way. So, if you look at there's two videos put out, two documentaries. One which is absolutely one of the worst documentaries ever seen, and they should be ashamed of ever put the damn thing out. And that is Murder Beyond the Grave. It's on Discovery, and it's with Patterson, the writer, and he starts out by going, "Oh, have fun." I'm like, who says that at the beginning of a murder documentary? I hope you have fun. I was like, that right appalled me right away. It was a highly overacted, not based on evidence, pile of garbage if I've ever seen it. Just the way they presented it was just quite appalling. In their version, so I'll tell you what their version was, that he's the greatest guy ever. Sweet, wonderful guy. Living with his girlfriend and her 8-year-old son. He cares about that son so much. He buys him tickets to go to the games, and he just wants to do nothing but nice things for her. He's just madly in love with her. He's obsessed with her because she's a beautiful woman. He's just so into her, and so he ends up losing his job. And he was a drug dealer, but we'll ignore that fact. So anyway. Even though he's a drug dealer, but what he's trying to do, according to this one, is that he's trying to protect his girlfriend's son from the drug dealers. So he has to come up with some idea to pay some drug dealers off, you see. And so he has this idea, since he's already built this box for other reasons, but I don't even know where they came up with that. But anyway, it's for other reasons. And supposedly, the box was supposedly just kind of a flimsy, not the most well-made box. You get good and chuck it into the ground. It doesn't have to be really strong. So, especially got the guy in handcuffs, right? So, but they have him building this massively gorgeous box, and then, I'm not going to use it for that. Hey, I could put a body in it. So they're taking away some of the premeditation in this one, that he just became desperate because he's so in love with her and he wants to help her son. He doesn't want them to get hurt by the drug dealers. So he comes up with this wild scheme in order to save his family. That isn't his son, but he's now raising him as his son. He's just gonna save them all. And so that's why he does this. And it presents her as a femme fatale, so that he wouldn't have never done this if it hadn't been for her. He wanted to please her, wanted to give her, when he was doing all the cocaine stuff and was making money, she was a pretty poor woman. She didn't have much money. She was working 3 jobs trying to raise a kid. And here comes along this handsome fellow, and he's got money and he's spending it. And she's taken in by maybe his looks and the fact he has a lot of money to spend on her. And so he treats her like maybe a princess, maybe true. But that, when his drug deal goes bad, the police bust into his home, they arrest him, and then I guess he rats out some bigger guy. So he's out, but he now has to work a crappy job. So he's been working a crappy job for like a year, and they don't have the money they used to have. You can believe that she was just happy to have him out of the drug business, or you can believe that she wanted more money and urged him back into it. You can believe what you want on that. There's no real good proof either way. So anyway, supposedly in this documentary, he's so madly in love with her and obsessed with her, he'll do anything for her. So, and her son. So he decides he's going to kidnap Stephen Small. And so he does that. And it says here, let's see. And in this one, it does say that she doesn't know anything about what he's doing. That she's out in the garage. The box he was building is gone. She didn't know what it was for anyway. She just thought it was just building it for somebody and getting some money for it, maybe. So anyway, he does ask her to pick him up in the middle of the night. And then she says, why? And he goes, well, just trust me. Don't you trust me? And she says, yes, I trust you. So there's that. So doesn't know what's happening. So then Supposedly, he says in an early interview that she didn't know anything, and I don't know how accurate that is. So then at the end of the story, it goes like this. This is this one version that they eventually he does lead the police to where the body is, and they dig up the box and they find the body of Stephen Small in there. Now he supposedly is massively shocked when he sees Small is dead. That's and he's like, no, that's not what's supposed to have happened, and so he's stunned, and so then they have him walking past the cells, and he's like, sorry, and she's like, I trusted you. So anyway, but it's so badly done. It just is. The other one you can watch, I thought was better, was called Killer Couples. And let me see what they basically said here. They're talking about him being a handsome playboy, selling cocaine, and wooing her with a fancy life. And then the question they ask, how far would he go to give her what she wanted? And again, it's interesting how she gets the blame of why he's doing what he's doing. Now, I find that interesting because a lot, especially for females are funny. Females either want to believe that the woman is completely blameless, or they want to paint her as a femme fatale. It's either one or the other. And how does the guy come off in this? So in this both of these documentaries, he is only there doing what he's doing to please her, and they're not looking at his life before he met her. This guy's not a good guy, guys. He's not a good guy. He cheated on his wife over and over again. He met her while he was still married. She decided she wasn't going to date him, and then he wooed her some more to get her to go with him. And he loved living the high life with the cocaine, and he did not like, his family wanted him to go into the family business, and he found it too boring and dull, too blue collar. So he wanted that life he wanted. That had nothing to do with her. He liked a lot of money. He liked being flashy. And just because she was the woman in his life at the time doesn't mean that she was the cause of his choices that he made. I mean, that to me is jumping a little too far. Did she enjoy the money? Probably. She wasn't a very wealthy person, and she was struggling. And it was a decent looking guy at the time. So you have a girl who's let me read. I just want to read you a little about her life, just so you get to see where she's coming from, so we can decide how guilty she is of whatever. Okay, I had it on the right page, and it has now thrown it. I got to find out where it started. It's her background, and it took me a while to find this one page, and I thought it was very interesting when I found it. Hold on a sec. Seriously, where? Hold on, guys. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right. It's a 65-page document. So, all right. Here we go. Who is Nancy? I want you to know who she is, because this is all mostly about whether she was guilty of the crime of murder and whether she should get out because of domestic abuse. She was born in 1961. She lived in that town. She lived and worked in Kankakee her entire life until her arrest at 26 years old, 1987, youngest of four siblings. She was incarcerated for 27 years. That was longer than that. Maybe this is when this was, that's when this was written. Let's see. Her mother has polio. She's now 85. Okay. Her mother worked at Armor Pharmaceuticals, and then her father was an alcoholic and frequently gone from the house. At 8 or 9 years old, parents divorced, and her paternal grandparents took care of her while her mother was working. And so her father did stay in the house sometimes, but drunk. Let's see. When she was 12 years old, she began drinking. By age 14, she was smoking marijuana. At 15 years old, she became pregnant. So she met this a senior high school guy, and she got pregnant, and they had a baby. She quit school. 3 years later, they divorced. And then let's see. Now she's a newly single mother living on her own. She was on public assistance for less than a year until she found a work in a cleaning business. Then she worked a second job in Alden's department store. The department store closed down and she couldn't afford the apartment, so she moved back in with her mother. By this time, she was in a relationship with an abusive man. Then Nancy and her friend decided to move to Dallas, Texas to find work so she just could escape the abuser. She didn't tell him she was leaving. She left her son with her paternal grandparents and went off to Dallas. And she found work, but her abuser tracked her down. She came back home. She had weakness in the legs and arms. She was diagnosed with Guillain, I cannot pronounce this one either, Guillain-Barré syndrome, a temporary inflammation of the nerves. She took medication. Now she's 21. Now she works at Kroger grocery store. She got some money. She moved into their own apartment. And she took care of her son, picked him up from school, took him to baseball, whatever, Little League. All right, now she meets him. She first met Edwards when she and a girlfriend were in a local bar. She was 23, working at Kroger. Edwards bought her a drink. He was trying to engage with Nancy, but she knew he was married and she was not interested. She and her friend left the bar to go somewhere else, and he went to that bar and tried to buy him drinks and kept following her. At this time, Nancy and 7-year-old Ben, so you can see they weren't together very long before this whole thing went down, were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the corner of Greenwood and Eagle Street. Edward and his wife and children also lived in the area about 6 blocks away. They kept running into each other, these two. In 1985, she started to work in the deli. She also worked at the municipal bank as a teller. She worked 50 to 55 hours a week, and she had people taking care of her son while she was at work. Approximately 6 months after she met Edwards at the bar, he appeared at her apartment late one night with a paper bag containing some of his clothes, telling her his wife had kicked him out of their home. He said he needed a place to stay for the night, and then he left the next day. But then they started spending time together. He had a boat. Let's see, what did he have here? Edwards had a boat and a place near the river. He wanted a place near the river. So I guess it's her, Nancy's sister leased the house on the river to Edwards. Edwards and his wife finally realized the divorce in 1985, and he talked Nancy into moving in with him during the summer of 1986. He told her she could quit her 2 jobs or just take the summer off. Nancy and Ben moved in with him, and she quit her jobs at the bank and Jewel. Soon after they moved into Edwards' rented house, a friend of Edwards, Mike Spalding, came and said to him, there's this guy named Mitch Levitt, who was a big drug dealer in Chicago. Mike said Mitch Levitt had prime cocaine and was looking for someone interested in buying kilos of it to sell. This was the first time Nancy heard about Edwards' involvement with cocaine. Edwards received some money from the divorce settlement from the house, and he told Nancy he wanted to take this money and make more money, and then he'd get out of the drug business. At this point, Nancy had used cocaine once at a New Year's Eve party. As far as she knew, he did not use cocaine. He kept saying he would just turn this money over and again get out of the business of selling drugs. A couple of months after she moved in with him, he started selling the drugs. Shortly after, he began freebasing cocaine. He became addicted. He showed Nancy how to freebase cocaine, and she would do it with him. From that point on, everything started spiraling downhill in their relationship and their life. They started not getting along. He's like all-night parties. She thought he was seeing other women. She didn't like the drug users coming and going. She felt shame for being a drug user. And so they argued about partying lifestyle and so on and so forth. Edward said he would find another home for Nancy and Ben to keep her out of his business. She hadn't returned to work yet. So he moved her out into a townhouse. She was addicted to cocaine, using 2 to 3 grams a day. Meanwhile, he's down in the house on the river, dealing drugs, partying, all that stuff. Nancy would occasionally drive to his house and find him asleep in the middle of the day. They would argue and she would leave. By late 1986, they were no longer a couple in any conventional sense of the word. She didn't tell her family how bad it was. She didn't tell them about her drug problems. And friends knew. All right. So anyway, she felt she was financially dependent on him. She wanted to go away, leave town and start over, but she hadn't gotten there yet. All right. So now, now we get to the point where Edward says that the police raided his house, seized drugs and money, and arrested him. And the police told him he was facing 6 to 30 years in prison if he was convicted. They offered him a deal if he would cooperate. They wanted to get his supplier, Mitch Levitt, in Chicago. Edwards would be an informant working with drug enforcement agents. Okay. He said he didn't want to go to prison, so he did that. He didn't want to stay at the house that had been raided. He wanted to come and stay at the townhouse. Since his name was on the lease and he was paying the rent, she had no right to keep him out, so he came with his clothes. And then they sold the house. The sister sold the house on the river, I guess. Meanwhile, they gave Edwards a wire to wear, and they followed him, and so on and so forth. And things didn't do so well with that. Edwards received probation for his drug case, as far as she was aware. And then now they moved all his stuff out of the other house. Now they were living all three together. She sold some Mary Kay and cleaned houses. Meanwhile, he's trying to collect drug debts from people who owed him money. He said Mitch Levitt owed a lot of money, and he said that Levitt was threatening Edwards' children and ex-wife. Now, this is where the first documentary comes in and says he was just trying to protect her. Well, and in parentheses, it says, whether any of this is true, Nancy does not know, and this is what Edwards told her at the time she believed him. He seemed afraid of Levitt. So during the summer of 1987, he was increasingly tense, agitated, angry, and abusive to Nancy. He would shove her around, on occasion tore the phone off the wall as she tried to call the police. And so basically that was what was going on. They were having a rough relationship. Things weren't going well. It's hard to say what he was doing. He was still dealing drugs on a smaller level. Now, let me stop here for a second. All right, hold on a second. I want to put my sweater back on. It's like 61 degrees in here because it's like 9 degrees outside, so it's really cold in the house. We have a motherboard problem on my heating system, so we're waiting on that to come in. Hold on. So what you see here, I just want you to be aware, we're not talking about anybody who's smart. Okay, this is something that I think sometimes when we see reenactments or we hear about things later on, we have this idea that everybody's they're all like these brilliant mafioso people. They know exactly what they're doing. They're smart and they're cartel people. Pablo Escobar types. No, he's a low-life drug dealer. She's a poor, uneducated woman who hooked up with a low-life drug dealer. Did she do cocaine? Who knows? Cocaine's around. Maybe they're both doing cocaine. They're kind of a mess. Basically, they're both a mess, and neither one of them are highly educated. So nothing brilliant is going on here. And I think that's an unfortunate part where they make too much of this. When he decided to do the kidnapping, one of the things they got him on, which I think is completely ludicrous, the prosecution claim was that he never intended this guy to survive. And he had to know that the air, the pipe that he put in there for the air would not be sufficient and the guy would die quickly. Well, I see absolutely no evidence that he knew that. He's not that bright. I mean, I didn't even know. I had to look it up myself. What about airways? And I Googled it. So I'll show you what I Googled. All right. So I Googled, if you breathe through a long tube, will you die? Because if you're laying in that box, you've only got so much air in the box. And if you're just depending on the air to roll into the box, and it's a small tube, a tube like this, maybe it's not enough. I was wondering if you put your mouth on it and breathe the air from the outside, would that be sufficient? And it says here, now here they're talking about the issue of being underwater, because a lot of times you think that was snorkeling because you got that tube that goes up. And then they have a snuba, where you have the long kind of hose thing that goes up. I've never tried it. And you're further down, like 20 feet, you can go like 20 feet down and you can breathe through this. It says here, if you breathe through a long tube, especially underwater, or in a situation where the tube is significantly longer than a few feet, you could die due to lack of oxygen, because the resistance to airflow in a long tube makes it difficult to inhale enough air to sustain your body's needs. So you simply can't get enough air coming in. Also, says here, the longer the tube, the greater the resistance to airflow, meaning you exert more effort to get the air in. Also, carbon dioxide buildup. If you can't inhale enough air, carbon dioxide can build up in your body, leading to respiratory failure. Now, do you think this guy knew all that crap? I don't think so. I mean, he had no reason. He took his tape recorder, and when he put the guy in the box, he said, tape recorded to your wife that you're in the box, and then I'm going to go call her and let her know you're in the box because be your voice on this tape recording. After that, he just kept asking for the money. The guy was underneath the ground. He was locked in there. So he wasn't going back with a tape recorder to prove that he was still alive, or, doing all the things you put the newspaper on a person's chest, shows they're still alive. He didn't seem to have that plan. He thought he was going to get that money within 24 hours. He thought there would be a couple days worth of air because the guy could breathe the air. He gave him water. He gave him food, gave him a light. It doesn't sound like a guy. If he just wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have to go through all that damn work. You just take him someplace, make a recording, and shoot him. You know what I mean? You can get it over with quickly. You don't have to put him in a box and put all these things in with him. I don't think he had any intention of killing him. So I think the prosecution was wrong with that. And I think the jury found him guilty within 61 minutes of planning to murder the guy. And I think that was incorrect. Did he kidnap him? Yes. Did he die during commission of a felony? Yes. So does he deserve life in prison? Yes. But I don't see that he actually planned to murder him. And I think that bothers me that they pushed that when I don't see any evidence that was true. He's an idiot. He came up with a plan, which he thought he was going to get a crap load of money. He was going to pay off drug dealers. He's going to enjoy his money, and hey, he might get her as a little trophy too. I don't see any evidence he only did it to save her, or because he was obsessed with her or his son. They were already having all kinds of issues. He liked money. The dude liked money, and he was in trouble with dealers, bigger people. So I think he thought this was, hey, I'll kidnap this guy. I'll get this bunch of money, and they won't know it was me. Well, he was so bad at the job, mind you. His fingerprints were everywhere. I mean, there was so much evidence at the scene that he committed the crime, that he had shoes at home that had the type of soil that came from that exact location. I forgot how many places his fingerprints were. He was seen buying the items that he needed to pull this thing off. I mean, the guy was a moron. And so I do not think he understood that the guy wasn't going to live to, be able to breathe through the tube. I think he was an idiot. Now, was he a psychopathic idiot? Person didn't have empathy for the guy? Probably. I mean, he's a drug dealing, cheating, lying, a bunch of thing guy. But I don't see that he premeditatedly planned to kill this guy at all. And I think he was shocked when they opened up the box and the guy was dead. He probably did go, oh my God, I didn't see that coming, because he didn't. So he wasn't planning to murder the guy. And that bothers me that is pushed, because I just don't see it's true. But does he belong in prison for the rest of his life? Oh, heck yeah. I mean, it's not okay to kidnap people and bury them in a box under the ground. That's not okay. And then have them die because of your stupidity and carelessness. You deserve your life in prison. Absolutely. I just don't see that it was premeditated murder. I don't see that that was true at all. So that's where I stand with him. So let me check some of your comments, and I'll get to more about her. Let's see. Yeah, I think, apparently he was a well-loved. Well, the thing, he seemed extraordinarily well-loved in the town. And I think this is one problem when sometimes have with the jury system, is that emotions will take over. The crime is the same, whether he's well-loved or he's not well-loved. The crime would have been the same. So the issue to me is not how wonderful the person was who was murdered, but whether the person who murdered him was committing a crime. And if they're committing a crime, that they get proper sentencing for that crime, proper punishment, and that the victim gets justice, whether we like the victim or we don't like the victim. So Okay, that's a reasonable trigger warning. If yeah, it's not a very that's true. They did show the body. They show some crime scene photos from that. I did not want to show the body in the box. I wanted to show the box to show you could that he built one. Um, uh, Catherine. Okay, this is interesting. Just thinking, nobody really knows if it's Hindley or Brady calling the shots, or forcing each other to participate. It depends. I might do a whole thing on them one day. Um, the Yeah, we aren't there. This is very, very true. We aren't there to know what's going on behind those walls. We don't know, for example, her claims that he was abusive. How abusive was he? Um, and from what I'm seeing, I'm not hearing that she was beaten, that she ended up in the hospital, that they had to call the police 500 times. Sounded more like he just had anger problems and just like ripping a phone out of a wall and something like that, yelling. I don't really consider that abuse. I consider that people living together. That is it to the level of that. Now, the later claim that he also says later, he says he wasn't able to say that earlier because he was going for an appeal. But later he says, well, yeah, I did threaten her and the son, saying, hey, if you don't cooperate. Um, Personally, I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all. I don't believe that. I think that was a lawyer driven idea to come up with, because there wasn't enough abuse in her life to pull off I was abused, therefore I should be let go of this, charge. Um, so if that's true, how would you then get her to cooperate, except for saying, I'm going to shoot you and your son? I mean, I think that to me is a defense lawyer technique, where you're sitting in the room going, what can we come up with? Oh yeah, well, okay. How many times did you go to the hospital? Oh, not enough. Oh, did you ever break anything? Oh no. Okay. Well, why don't we say you had a gun, right? You had a gun. Why don't we say that's not unlikely? So I don't trust that statement at all. So that one I don't buy. The whole abuse thing. Um, uh, there to me, when if somebody wants to claim abuse, remember Carla Homolka up there, up in Canada. So she's with her husband Paul Bernardo, and they're kidnapping. First of all, she gives her own sister to him to rape, and they end up killing her. And then she stays with him, and then they kidnap teenage girls, and she's at home with the teenage girls while he's out doing whatever. And she participates in filming, she participates in the sex, and then she says, "Oh, I was an abused wife. Get out of here, Carla. You're a psychopath." Carla Homolka was a 100% psychopath. Remember, I'll link the show I did on her. No, I'm not buying the abused wife bullcrap, but she used it. And it's very annoying to me. There are rare cases where somebody actually is in a situation where they themselves are basically trapped in a house with somebody who they're terrified of. And that person says, look, I'm going to kidnap this girl. I'm going to put her in the basement, and you shut the hell up or I'll kill you. And that person will then cooperate in imprisoning the person in the basement. And they do so because they're in fear for their life or their other children's lives, because this person truly has them also essentially kidnapped. But they're a higher level kidnappee, that they get to have more privileges than the bottom level kidnapped person. Can you then say this person only did what they did because they had no choice? I think you have somewhat of a case there. My opinion always has been you have to go to the police. I mean, you have to take the risk. If you married the guy, or you're with the guy, you chose to be with him, and you don't choose to go to the police, then you're basically participating in what they're doing. And that's a lot of what this case may be about. That if you're under threat, but you have access to go to the police, especially if the guy's away for the day, you can take your other children and run to the police. Could he come back and kill you? Sure he can. A lot of women and men, they get killed by their exes all the time. They're on the courthouse steps, and then their ex shows up and blows them away. Can that happen? Sure it can. But do you have the right to harm other people because you have fear of being harmed yourself? My opinion is morally, no, you don't. Now, there are going to be psychiatrists out there who say they can't, they're so afraid they just simply can't function. And I'll leave that to the psychiatrists and the courts to decide that. Myself, I feel like I don't have that right. If I'm under threat of death or whatever, I can't see harming somebody else in order to, for me not to be harmed. I just wouldn't, I just can't do it. There's a great story in a book called, I always forget the name of it, The Nazi Killers. Anyway, there was a Jewish doctor in Auschwitz, and she was told she had to select who was going to be exterminated, and she was allowed to select them because she's a doctor, so she could pick the weaker ones. And she said she could not do it. And Mengele, I guess, said he'd kill her, and if she didn't, and she said, "Well, I'll kill myself if I do. So have at it. I won't do it." And he goes, "I respect that." So, but that I'm of her thinking. But I understand where incredible fear, especially for your children, if you have them who are also under threat, you could be that scared that you would go along with somebody, and therefore that domestic claim of domestic abuse could be used in defense. Do I think it applies here? And my answer to that is absolutely not. I don't see any actual proof that she was being so abused and was in such fear that she had to go along with killing somebody because he said so. So I think that's nonsense. And I think for her to get out on that, I think was just a defense ploy. I think that's what they used. So I'm going to go to some of your comments, and I'm going to go to what I think of her participation in the crime and the sentencing of Nancy Rish. But I'll check on some of your comments first. Let's see. Well, again, this was not for him. This was for everybody in the state. So the death penalty was just taken off the table. And again, I personally do not think he planned to kill him, although what he did was 100% wrong. But and I say I don't have objection to life in prison without parole for him. I don't have a problem with that because I think he's but I personally do not think he planned to kill him. I don't see that. That just bothers me because I don't see the evidence supports that. I don't have to like the guy. I can still call him a psychopath. I can still want him in prison all his life. I just don't agree with the way the prosecution used that to get the death penalty by saying he intended to kill him. And I just don't see that there's evidence of that. I'm bothered by stuff that's not true and manipulations, even by the prosecution. Yes, I'm usually on the side of the prosecution, but I'm bothered by that they pushed that and had these experts come in and say, well, he wouldn't have survived. He couldn't survive with that kind of air device. Guy's an idiot. He's not going to know that. And I just don't understand how that, just because experts knew better, that he would have any freaking clue. I just don't see that because I had to look it up myself because I really don't know how long would you last. How short, how long? He probably thought he'd done the right thing. The guy was going to live. He's going to eat his little candy bars, drink his water, breathe through the thing. He's going to get $1 million. And then he's going to say, this is where you can find the body. That he botched everything else too. Every piece of evidence pointed to him being there and doing this. And he was, they staked him out for making the phone calls. They saw him making the phone calls. They followed him home to his house. I mean, the guy's an idiot. He's not someone who put together a brilliant science project. He did not. So, well, again, he's an idiot. Okay, he's not that smart. If you look at a lot of criminals, sometimes you just scratch your head and you go, "Are you that dumb?" It's like, yes, you're that dumb. I mean, that's how people get caught. That's why usually they get caught. Thank God they get caught and they do really stupid stuff. Anyone normal would realize that. So wait, I'm going back to the thing. What would be normal? Clarissa. I don't know. I think the jury came back so quickly. I think the jury probably was very emotional about the horror. It's not, you look at this crime, everybody thinks, oh my God, it's the crime everybody fears. Tell me that there's two movies made about being buried in a box under the ground. Can you tell me the two movies names? One, they're both creepy as heck, and they're both terrifying. And I think any of us, the thought of it is so horrible that you're going to hate this guy. You're going to hate him. And he did it to this nice man who had 3 children, a wife, and people in town loved him. He did that to this nice man, put him in a box under the ground, terrifying him, terrorizing him. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's horrifying. I mean, there's no way around that. But do I think, again, if I take my emotions out of it and my own thought about how dreadful that would be, it is one of my worst fears. I don't think he purposely killed him. I think he was surprised because he's a moron. So now, all right, I want to go to her. How did she get convicted? It took them a little longer to convict her. I think it was a couple hours. Look, they convicted her of the same crime, except they didn't give her the death penalty. That was the difference. Now, what I'm bothered by in her conviction is that there was actually no evidence that she knew that he had buried him in a box and was asking for ransom money. There's actually no evidence of that. Is there evidence that she knew he was up to something? Yes, there was evidence of that. Let me see if I can pull this up now. Go back to so let's see what happened here as far as she goes. 1987, he started building a box in the garage outside of the townhouse. He was not hiding it. The garage door was often open, and he told many people, including Nancy, that he was building the box for his brother Duke to keep his pool supplies and chemicals in. 6 foot pool cues. All right. At another time, he said he was building it to store firewood. There was nothing suspicious about the box. The townhouse garage is right across the street from the police station, and they left the door open. All right. Now, I also want you to understand something. She's not that bright, okay? People, again, they assume that everybody knows everything that the other person is doing. If that were true, half the people wouldn't realize, well, I didn't realize my husband was having an affair for 20 years with the secretary. Oh, why not? Didn't you notice it? Well, you notice things, maybe, but maybe the things that person noticed were not, to them, obvious, or there were reasons, or they were just in denial, or whatever it is. But guys work in garages building. He had built stuff before. He was had carpentry skills. He's out there building some crap in the garage. Half the time, women don't care what that dude is building in the garage. Anyway, it's like, are you coming in now? It's time for dinner. I mean, he's out there doing some shit with some wood and crap. If she's not interested in that, she's not out there going, oh, and how are you building it? And why is it 6 feet? She's not doing that. She probably didn't pay a bit of attention. He said, she hears in conversation, I'm building something for my brother. She's like, whatever. All right. During 87, he spent a lot of time with his friend Tracy Storm. Oh, this is some claim that she was seen. One of the reasons they were figuring out about him was that they were in a car together, driving up to like a gas station. She would park a distance away. He would get out and go over to a telephone and make a phone call. She was seen a couple times, not her face, but a guy. He was getting out, and there was a blonde-haired woman. So I believe it absolutely was her. I don't know. It's not some other blonde-haired woman. So that's all nonsense. It was her. She was in the car a couple times, driving to where he made phone calls. And the other issue was that she drove out and picked him up from the area of where the body was buried, because he had kidnapped him from outside his house in his own car, driven his car out, and left the car sort of in that area where the body was. He told her to come out 3 o'clock in the morning and pick him up. She did that in this isolated location. And you could say, why isn't she a suspicious woman? All right, let's look a little further. So A man, some guy kept calling at night asking for Edward's, let's see. She said to this day, she said she didn't know what any of this was about, but it had anything to do with the kidnapping. Some people were calling. She assumed they were drug dealers. And she also assumed he was maybe getting back into drug dealing, which he was. All right. He was acting strangely, she said, even for him. He was leaving the house a lot and not coming back. He was nervous and not sleeping much. He was talking about large sums of money expected to get from Mitch Levitt, the Chicago drug dealer. He told Nancy he was collecting drug debts and entering his customers' houses to steal things as payment, which apparently one of the guys he stole stuff from, he stole the handcuffs from and then used them. And another time in August, Edwards took a gun from his friend Jeff Drury's home, which also was the gun he used. So he did steal crap from his friends' houses who were drug dealers. And he was collecting debts. So when he acts weird, does want a suspicion, hey, drive me up there. I'm going to make a phone call. Hey, drop me over here. I have no problem with her assuming he's drug dealing. Why would you think, oh no, he's not dealing drugs? I bet you he's kidnapping somebody. Why would she automatically think that? I wouldn't. And why? And you could say, why is she just going along and doing this stuff? Well, you could say she was afraid of him. I don't know that there's evidence of that, or that he put a gun to her, or he's just saying, hey, stop, come on, help me out here. Come on, just don't be a jerk, All I'm asking you to do is drive to this location. You can do that. Don't you trust me? Whatever. I can just see him bullying her because she's already been bullied. He moved back into the house with her. He's bullied her before. Bullying, I believe he does. Manipulation, I believe he does. I don't know that he beat her, but he definitely, she was under his control and power to some extent. And so that she would do what he asked her to do, to me, is not proof that she had any knowledge of the crime he was committing or wanting to participate in the crime he was committing, or that she knew he was committing that crime. She would not have participated. I think she thought, from everything I've seen, it sounds like to me, she thought he was involved in drugs. And it said here, she asked him did not know what he was doing. She asked him, he got upset and said, don't ask me, and got hostile. Something I got to do. You don't understand how important this is. But he didn't tell her what he was planning. I believe that's true. Anyway, meanwhile, she's doing all the rest of the stuff. Now, this is where supposedly he threatened her. He threatened to get the gun he'd taken from Drury's house. He told Nancy, I'll kill you, Benjamin, myself. Now, he may have said that in the sense that, like the family, my whole life is going down the toilet. If I can't solve this problem, I'm going to kill us all. That I kind of believe he would say, and then she's like, oh my God, I better help him out. I better not piss him off. He told Nancy that he had to do this, but he did not want her to know what it was or get involved. And I think that's true too. I don't think he would have wanted her to know exactly what he's doing. Why? Because maybe she would think he was a horrible person, which he is, or because she might rat him out. She might screw up and tell the police. I think he's smart enough to not tell her what he was doing. Absolutely believe that. So I think she did not know. I think she just did stuff because he said he told her what to say about certain things anyone asks. He says, and she didn't know why she's supposed to lie, but she lied. Now, is she guilty of being willing to be hooked up with a guy who is a criminal? Yes, she is. Kind of like when I think of mafia wives, people, the wife of our cartel boss. You're living in a $10 million house. Where do you think that money came from? And when you hear about people being another cartel member being murdered or a police being shot down, I'm just watching the Pablo Escobar series again, El Patron del Mal, and this new journalist who's a top journalist at the paper there, he starts writing about Pablo Escobar and the cartel and how horrible they are, and then he gets shot dead, and the wife's like, "Did you kill the journalist?" And Pablo's like, How can you accuse me of that? I'm your husband. You're calling me a murderer? What kind of wife are you? And she's like, and he's lying to her face. He did kill him, but he lies like that all the time to her. And she probably knows better, but she's not willing to challenge him. Why is she willing to challenge him? Well, she's been married to him for a long time. She has 2 kids by him. She's known him since she was like I think 13, and as far as Escobar's wife, and she's living a life of luxury too. And I also don't know if she knows how to get away from a guy that's that powerful. At a certain point, you do become fearful that if I try to leave, what's he going to do to me? He doesn't take loss very well. He'll probably, eliminate me because he's done it to other people. So does a person have some knowledge? My answer to that is yes. She had some knowledge he was involved in drugs. She absolutely knew he was involved in drugs, and he was still involved in drugs. He is a drug dealer. She knew that. She hooked herself up with a drug dealer, and she went along with some of his whatever he was planning. And I do not believe she knew what he was planning. She did go along and cooperate to help him to accomplish whatever he was wanting to accomplish. But I don't think she knew because he didn't tell her. Now, the other thing that, so if you look at the actual, I'm trying to find the physical evidence. There was nothing that put her at the scene of the crime. Absolutely nothing. I don't know. In no way do I believe she was at the scene of the crime, where the box was buried. She saw his body. She wasn't there when he was kidnapped. She didn't go to the place. She was not at the scene of the crime. Some people thought they might have seen her in a hardware store with him. And so she goes with her husband boyfriend. She goes with her boyfriend to a hardware store and he buys something. And she's supposed to know that means something. I mean, I used to accompany my husband to the hardware store, and I had no idea what the hell he was buying. It's like, because that wasn't my thing. I just said, well, he's going to buy whatever he's going to buy to fix whatever he's going to fix. It didn't mean anything to me. So I just see nothing. They went into court with no physical evidence, no proof she was ever at the crime scene, no proof that she had knowledge of what he was actually doing. And she got convicted, got a life in prison, or life without parole. That's probably one of the harshest sentences I've ever seen for someone that they absolutely did not prove even knew what was happening. I find that stunning. I mean, I do. What would I have given her? I don't know, 5 years, 10 years for participating in what turned out to be a horrible thing? Would I want to go to prison for being for she was around when it was going up? Again, not really proven. Apparently she told some lies. She, when she was asked about things, she didn't quite tell the truth. But again, she thought he was dealing drugs and she didn't know what to have. She was trying to protect herself and probably, who knows what she was doing. But I just don't see there was evidence that she knew that a kidnapping and a murder, kidnapping, well, not even a murder. He didn't know he was murdering somebody. She certainly didn't know that. I don't think she knew it was a kidnapping either. I think she thought some big drug deal was going down. And should she go to prison? Yes. Should she have gotten life without parole? Absolutely. I just don't see it. I find that shocking. Do I think she should get out based on she was forced into it by domestic abuse? No, I think that's silly. I think that's just a defense tactic. But I do think she was overcharged. I do. So I don't know what kind of person she is today. I mean, they say she's been all those years in prison, been a model prisoner. A lot of people are model prisoners after they've committed a crime. She, in theory, had no criminal record when she met up with this guy. She did get into drug addiction. I think under other circumstances, people would have felt sorry for her. But for some reason, in this particular circumstance, she was well hated. And he, for some reason, gets off being for falling in love with her. And that's why he does these things. That's nonsense. The dude's a criminal. He's an outright criminal. And she was just his lady of the day. So I think that it could be any other lady. It could have been no lady. He'd still want to do the same thing to get the money. And I think she just was, unfortunately for her, along for the ride. But yeah, so that's the way I view this thing. So I think it's a horrible crime. So no question, it's a horrible crime. But I think some of the emotional stuff around it, because it is that kind of a crime that we're all terrified of, and think of anybody having to deal with, it's so unpleasant that it's hard to be unemotional about it. So let me see some of your comments. All right. Um, oh, that's an interesting question. Why didn't the Innocence Project get involved? Is it because it wasn't a death sentence? That's a good question. The Innocence Project does things for that are popular in the media. Yes, it wasn't a death penalty on that. Certainly, there's no way he could get him off because he's guilty as hell. As far as like, the physical evidence was out everywhere. Yeah, yeah. They pick and choose, and then people usually have to come forward and push that. The appeals didn't work in Illinois either. The Illinois, one of the things they did was the appeals seemed to go with. They started with she did not commit the crime. There's no physical evidence linking, but you have to add something new. So they're like, well, supposedly her lawyer knew the victim, and so that was kind of weird. And then the lawyers were crappy lawyers when they were in court, and for whatever reasons, just none of it ever worked. And she spent a hell of a long time in prison. I mean, it's one of the longest prison sentences I've ever seen for sitting in a car. I mean, literally, she was sitting in a car. I mean, that's what they got her on, was sitting in a car, driving a car to near a phone booth. Now, if she knew exactly what was happening, did she have a responsibility to tell the police to save Stephen Small's life? Well, the answer to that would be yes, absolutely. If I knew that she knew what he was doing, if I saw proof that she knew he was being kidnapped and was being held underground in a box, then I have no problem with a life sentence. Not one bit, because she didn't save his life. She should have saved his life. But I honestly cannot find any proof that she knew. And that's what bothers me. In which case, I would get her for 5 or 10 years. And I would say life in prison was excessive for somebody who did not commit a murder. And she did not commit the kidnapping either. So it was a weirdly overcharged thing. And for him, again, I don't think he planned the murder. I don't think he meant to murder the guy. Did he deserve life in prison? Yes. Did he deserve the death penalty? Well, there is that felony and the commission of a crime, and you can push that one. But I think emotions are very, very strong on this case, and that's what led the jury. And again, why I'm for a professional jury system. Not that it's not a case of total innocence. You know what I'm saying? It's not one of those things. But again, to take the emotions out of it, to be able to look at things and say, okay, what is actually being presented here? And not just saying, oh yeah, he should have known he couldn't have breathed through that damn tube. No, that's just silly. She should have known he was being kidnapped and murdered. Where's the proof? Just got to have proof. Thing called evidence, So I think the jury conclusions I think they were going by they were given charges. This is what they were charged. I don't know. And they went with that, and but very quickly too. So I think it was a very emotional stuff. And yeah, so anyway, let me get some more of your comments. Well, I have never heard of it either. And say, when cases are brought to me by you guys, because I can't possibly know of all the cases in the world. And there's so many, sometimes when you bring me a case, and this does happen, people bring me a case and say, why won't you do this case? I'm like, because I have nothing to say. It's an obvious case and it's already been, you can just tell the story of it and there's nothing for me to add to it. And I'm not a storyteller, so I'm not a true crime storyteller channel. So if I don't have something to analyze, I can't do it. So I have to make sure that there is that. And then I have to just get to it. So I always tell people, come back and tell me again, because I get overwhelmed. And sometimes from the other side of the camera, people, when they send me an email, they think, oh, see, Pat's reading the email right now. They don't realize Pat just got 20 or 30 emails in, and I can't even keep up with this stuff. And if you wonder why some large channels never respond to anybody, that's why. They can't. I mean, if you got 1 million subscribers, you're not going to ever respond to a comment, and you're probably never responding to an email either, because you just can't. Luckily, I'm still a smaller channel, so I do look at my comments when they come in on the shows, and after a while, I don't. I mean, again, so many, because sometimes I'll look at the first ones when they come in, I might answer those, maybe 10 people I can comment, and then I go back and look at the show later, and there's 1,000 comments. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that, So the same thing is true here, patrons, I do try to pay attention to your emails more because you're supporting me through Patreon. But even that sometimes comes in, and it's just whoa, can't keep up with it. So you can always try again. And sometimes and I'll finally get to it. One day it'll pop up. Some I have a list, by the way, on the side of my iPad. I have files that when somebody sends me something, I look it up, and then if I like the case, I think I might want to do it. I make the file list over there, and I add things to it. And then one day I'll come back, and maybe 6 months later, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that case now, because now I'm looking at it again, and it's interesting to me. So let's see what else you got to say here. If my hubby is building a box, I'm going to ask 1,000 questions about it. Especially if you're not getting along well, you want to make sure it's not for you. This is true. This is very true. Listening while you're making dinner. Hey, I like to keep. I like keeping people company while they clean and cook. It's nice. I didn't have a lot of pictures to show in this case, so you're not missing. Sometimes I have lots of things I need to show, and you need to be looking at the video. But sometimes it's more audio, which it was. Okay, it's an interesting point. I think you're saying you don't care if you left him snacks, I guess, and supposedly air if you knew there was a possibility of death. Okay, that's a little more. Okay, I don't mind that argument. I think, Clarissa, that's reasonable. He said there were 48 hours that he had in that box. Did he know there was 48 hours? Did he know there was a possibility of death? Yes, I will agree with you on that. At some point, he probably knew that he's not going to hang in there forever. So yes, he did know there was a possibility of death. So okay, I'll go with that one. I'd still probably give him life and not the death penalty, just because I don't think he intended to kill him. I think, again, he's not that smart. He probably just thought, it'll last 48 hours. Yeah, sometimes if you're around certain people, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's it's when you start looking at people going, did you think this through? And the answer to that is no. And did they think it through logically, like you think it should be logically thought through? And the answer to that is also no. So, yeah. Yeah. Catherine says, I don't see it premeditated. He's put snacks in the box, bust a pipe, even though it didn't work. Yeah, this is my point. I really think if he wasn't intending that guy to live, there would be zero reason for him to do any of that. And one of the reasons he claims that she wasn't involved, which I'm not sure I buy either, is that if he had two people, if he had somebody to work with, he wouldn't have had to put him in the damn box. He could have had somebody watch over him, which kind of makes me laugh because, if you put somebody far enough away, like in the woods, like, can't you just tie him to a tree and put a gag on him? I mean, wouldn't that be more likely they'll survive than put him in a box in the ground? I mean, if it's a place where nobody's going to be walking through anyway, you could probably leave him there for 24 hours in the woods someplace and nobody'd find him. But again, sometimes people are overly clever. They think they're being smart when they're actually being dumb, because in doing what he did, he also left a ton of evidence, because he was being so clever, he was not clever. And that's sometimes the way they are. Go down to the bottom here. Oh, well, Pat has responded to many of my questions as a patron, and I'll replay. Oh, that's nice. Good, Allison. I'm glad. Sometimes it depends on your question. Some people say really dumb things, and I just don't bother to respond. Sometimes people say something, I'm thinking, that's very interesting, or it's a good question, or it's a great. I've seen some very good analyses from other people, from some of your patrons and subscribers that are in the comments, and I'm like, I like that. That's good. I like people to be able to think. Again, we don't always have to agree, but I like things to be thoughtful, at least thoughtful enough where it's worth examining, and then we could always come up to a different conclusion. But at least I want it to be thoughtful and not just some bunch of nonsense, Well, he told me, yeah, he was, oh, well, that's, told lots of people he's making something. He did tell people he's making this and he's making that. They weren't suspicious he was making a box to kidnap somebody. And so there's no reason she would think that either. I mean, when you look at risk factors, it's risky enough to hook up with a cocaine dealer when you got an 8-year-old kid. So already you're pretty stupid doing that, and you're putting a child's life at risk. So you're already doing something you shouldn't be doing. Then if you know there's going to be murder involved, is that what you'd want to get involved with? So I don't know. Again, a level of thinking may not have been the best. So, um, uh, what's the famous one though? Guarding Tess. There's a famous horrible one where the person wakes up in the box. I can't remember. Oh, it's done in French. I think it's done in English. There's 2 versions of it, and I just can't remember. But it is horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying. It's one of those, and one of them was well done, and one I didn't like. I think I like the French version better, which is unusual for me. I'm not sure, but I can't remember the name of it. So if anybody figures it out, put it in the comments. I do want to see one thing here if I can find it. I just want to look at the physical evidence again. Mhm. Where's the? I'll try to link some of these things so you could read through them later. Yeah, she admits to a lot of mistakes for getting hooked up with that dude, but she just never said she was involved in that. So let's see. I want to see where just the statement of facts. I'm looking for the physical evidence. Okay, hold on. When you're looking through these things, there's just so much information in these. Okay, what did he have here? Okay, they had. Let's see. Okay, I'm looking for the stuff that. Okay, here we go. I finally found it. Jeez. All right. They're from the crime scene. They recovered a soil standard from the box. Soil found on a pair of Edwards boots originated from the box. Oh, but they were unable to match any soil to the shoes of Nancy Rish. They lifted prints from a pipe located in the box and the box itself. The print lifted from the pipe matched Edwards' prints, but none of the prints compared with Rish's. There were also prints recovered that did not match any known prints. Okay, it's probably because it's I don't know, but so why he's handling the pipe with his fingers instead of gloves. Guy's not smart. So there was just a whole bunch of stuff. He was seen buying stuff and everything, and mostly again she was seen sitting in a car. So it's like that's probably the weakest case I've ever seen for somebody being charged with aiding and abetting to that extent. I'm still a little surprised that there wasn't more to link her to it. Carla Homolka, evidence all over the place, and she's free and remarried and has children. It's lovely. But Carla Homolka, exhibited every evidence of psychopathy, knowledge, enjoyment of raping and killing girls. And she was not an abused wife. So I find that she got off and she didn't. It's just kind of strange. Kind of just crazy. I never heard of the movie. I say I don't know which movie it was. Maybe I should just no. It's a famous movie. Famous. Okay, I'm googling it now because now I'm being annoyed, but I can't figure it out. Okay. French movie, Person Underground. Let's see if I get the right things there. French movie, Person buried alive. Uh, the Vanishing. Ha! Okay. All right. The Vanishing. That was the American version, was The Vanishing. And uh, The Vanishing was based on a story of a newspaper article he accidentally read about a female tourist who disappeared from a bus trip after buying chewing gum at a gas station in France. Um, so The Vanishing, is that the, trying to, the original title is Spoorloos. Oh, maybe that is the French. No, it's not French. What is it? Okay. The Vanishing is the version I liked. Okay. Spoorloos and The Vanishing. Okay, there's a bunch of names here that are not English names. So Rex and Saskia. Oh, okay. Where does it takes place? They're a young couple in love. They stop at a busy service station and Saskia disappears. Rex dedicates the next 2 years trying to find her, and then he receives some postcards from her abductor who promises to reveal what happened to her. And then he follows it, and then it happens to him. So it's very creepy. It's a creepy thriller. Oh, Dutch French. Okay. Oh, here we go. George Sluizer directed the brilliant Unforgettable Dutch/French suspense flick Spoorloos, aka The Vanishing, in parentheses, not to be confused with the wretched 1993 remake. And I agree with that. So if you want to see that movie, and it's very creepy, and if this is a relative of yours, don't see that movie. Spoorloos or The Vanishing. Be sure it's the Dutch-French version. So that's a very creepy movie. Melanie says, I totally agree with your assessment in this case, Pat. In some cases, however, the prosecution has to go with joint enterprise if both or all perpetrators have been found equally guilty. They did have separate trials. And I don't know why they had to be equally guilty, but yeah, there are sometimes weird prosecutorial things. I'm just kind of I was very surprised when I saw that she was in prison for life for her role, which I thought was, say, unless you could absolutely prove she knew, in which case, I just don't think they proved it. And I don't, could it be, if I had to say what percentage would I believe she knew and didn't know, I'd say 80%. I don't think she knew. 20% she could have, but as if I were on a jury, I would believe she probably didn't know. But I don't know if they gave any other options besides life in prison, and that, I don't know. It was very strange to me, even though it's a horrible crime. Yeah. Oh, you did see it. That was terrifying and sad. It was absolutely awful. Yeah. But it was well done, but not the American version. Yeah, stay away from the American version. It was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Sometimes remakes, are some remakes are really good. It's surprising. One of my favorite remakes is okay. I'm trying to remember. An Affair to Remember, I think. Isn't An Affair to Remember the one where the girl, they're on a ship together, and black and white film, and they're shipped together, and they fall in love, and they say, well, they got things to take care of, but if in a year they free from what they're, from their whatever, they'll meet together at the Empire State Building, and he goes to Empire State Building, and she doesn't show up. Does anybody remember that one? Does anybody? But the reason she doesn't show up, he finally sees her, and the reason finds out she's in a wheelchair, it's because she was looking up, and she got hit by a car. Well, it was redone in a Bollywood movie, a Bollywood movie out of India, and same exact thing. They made on a ship, and she's running to see him, and she gets hit. But what was funny, it was terrible funny, but it was also funny. When he finally sees her again, she's sitting in a chair with a blanket over her, and he brings her these what's called payals, Payals. They're like ankle bracelets, these beautiful ones I think his mother wanted to give her. And he said, well, I was giving these to you. and then he sits down to put them on her ankles, but she doesn't have any ankles because she got hit and her legs got cut off. So he's sitting there with the ankle bracelets and no ankles to put them on. It was horrible. Beautiful stuff, but it's a great remake. No, not Before Sunset. I think it's Affair to Remember. I'm pretty sure it's an Affair to Remember. But what's it? Yeah. But anyway, it's been redone in Bollywood. I thought it was a great redo. You know, it's a very famous actor and actress in it. But it just when he went to put them on her feet, like she didn't have any. I mean, it's like, oh, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, so I think that's it for today. The original is on Prime. The short's just not American though. That's what you want to make sure. 1990. Oh yeah, 1990 is not 1993. Yeah, they speak English. It's the wrong movie. So sounds like a dream. What? Which one? No, it's like no. And I gotta look this one up too. Okay, it's an affair. I'm pretty sure it's an Affair to Remember. Okay, let me look it up. And an Affair to Remember. Let's see if I'm right. This is the movie. Cary Grant, Deborah Kerr. Yeah, yep. They're going to meet at the Empire State Building. So that is the American one. It's beautiful. If you haven't ever seen it, it's a gorgeous movie. And the Bollywood remake is called Mon. Oh, Mon. It's called Mon. It's a remake of An Affair to Remember. The movie stars Amir Khan and Manisha Koirala, and it's beautiful. So I loved it. So those are things you can watch that are more, well, they have a love story at least, unlike this very sad story. So anyway, thank you all for being here. And it's a real tough one, as you know, as far as I say emotions in this one, because yeah, but so be it. So anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you on Sunday. I know this is Tuesday it's Tuesday night, and I did not do the show on Sunday because it was a football games on Sunday, and it was a family thing for me. So I decided to move it, and I moved it to today. So I'm glad you're all here, and thank you. And oh, aren't you nice? I appreciate that. I will see you on Sunday. Oh no, I'll see you probably on Thursday for the hangout. I think it's the 7:00 this week. So I think it's 7:00 Thursday at 7:00, and then I'll see you again on Sunday if you're going to be at both of those. So, and I will pick out what I'm going to do on Sunday. So thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.